Hi everyone, I'm Troy Lambert from the Plot Geek Academy, and today we're going to talk about climaxes. Climaxes in fiction. Don't get the wrong idea here. The climax in fiction is the story's most intense pivotal moment. It's where the central conflict reaches its peak and outcome becomes clear. Again, not other climaxes. Anyway. The climax is the turning point that decides the protagonist's fate, the resolution of the main conflict, and the direction of the story's conclusion. The climax is where all the narrative threads converge, leading to the resolution of the story's central tension, that tension you've been building since the beginning. Now, that climax has an impact on different characters in a different way. The first impact it has is on the protagonist. For the protagonist, the climax is the ultimate test of their character, skills, and resolve. It forces them to confront the central conflict head-on, often requiring them to make a significant decision or to take decisive action. This moment crystallizes their journey and it highlights how they've evolved throughout the story. Now, the protagonist's response to the climax can define them as a hero, an anti-hero, or a tragic figure, depending on whether they overcome the challenge or are defeated by it. The climax often brings out the protagonist's greatest strengths or exposes their deepest vulnerabilities, serving as the ultimate payoff for the character development that's been building throughout your story. Now, the antagonist, on the other hand, the climax usually has an opposite impact on them. The antagonist, whether it's a person, force, or internal conflict, also reaches their moment of reckoning during the climax. This is where the antagonist's plans or influence are either realized or thwarted depending upon the story's direction. The climax often exposes the antagonist's true nature, motivations, and limitations. And a note here on when the antagonist is not specifically a person, when it's a force or that internal conflict or even a system that the protagonist is battling. Generally speaking, those things are represented or personified by a single person. If they're not, often there's a struggle for the reader to connect to the resolution of the conflict. Now, this is the moment of final confrontation with the protagonist. This is where we see who will prevail. The resolution of this clash can lead to the antagonist's defeat, sometimes their redemption, or even sometimes a victory for the antagonist, depending on the type of story that you're writing. The climax, therefore, serves as a critical moment of truth for the antagonist and defines their role in the story's conclusion. And speaking of the story, the climax has an impact on the overall story as well. The climax is the narrative's crescendo, where the stakes are the highest and the tension that's been building throughout the story is finally released. It's the moment, again, not other climaxes. Anyway, the climax is the moment of greatest emotional intensity, where the reader is most engaged and invested in the outcome. The climax determines the story's direction towards resolution, signaling the beginning of the end. How the climax unfolds can also influence the story's theme, the moral, or the message. It either reinforces the central idea that the narrative has been exploring, or in some cases, it blows that apart and lets us examine it in an entirely different way. Now, structurally, the climax brings together all the key plot points, resolves all the character arcs and thematic elements that have been developed. It provides resolution and clarity for the central conflict for any subplots that we've created as well. In a mystery, all the clues and red herrings are wrapped up. All of the side quests of your characters are wrapped up. The effectiveness of the climax can significantly impact the reader's overall experience with the story. It's the moment when the narrative's promises are fulfilled and the emotional payoff is delivered. When writers fail to do this, readers really dislike the stories. And we, as people, have seen that over and over with stories we've read and movies that we've watched when the climax is simply not very satisfying. Now, the climax is the most crucial moment in the story. It affects the protagonist, the antagonist, the overall narrative in really profound ways. It's the point where the central conflict is addressed with finality, Character arcs are completed and the story's thematic essence is crystallized, leading to a satisfying and meaningful resolution for the reader. And that's a simple definition of climax, at least the type of climaxes in fiction, because we all know authors have the best climaxes, and that's thanks to the Kama Sutra. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining me. We appreciate you being here, and we'll see you next time.